Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Catrice with Bantu Cola. I'm super excited to have Derrick back on today. Derrick Scott. Hi, Derrick.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me again.
All is well, good, and I'm glad that you're here. Okay, so we were just having this wonderful conversation. I was like, I gotta get this on tape. I gotta get this on tape. And so, so now we're gonna start talking a little bit about COVID. So, guys, we don't talk about it anymore because I don't know, in my mind it's even though it's there, I just recently got over COVID about a month and a half ago. And it was a horrible experience. Oh my goodness. I was just like lying on a bed for 7 days straight. I didn't get over it for like 2 weeks. But it's a new variant that's coming out, and Derrick happens to be part of what is it that you're part of? Because I don't want to tell anybody a lie.
It's the White House Task Force on COVID-19.
Okay. So Derrick, tell us what's going on with COVID right now.
So I will tell you that COVID, let me first start by saying I hear a lot of people saying, oh, COVID is over, the pandemic is over. We're not. I want to make sure that everybody is aware that COVID is not over. The pandemic, as we know it, in and of itself has concluded, and we're now in the what's called the endemic phase of COVID-19.
What does endemic mean? I'm sorry.
So endemic phase means that it's not as an acute healthcare emergency or crisis as we have experienced these last few years with COVID. Now that is right now because we are, because we have the vaccinations, we have treatments for COVID and things of that nature. Hopefully what we're seeing is that people are not dying at the rate as they were from 2019 to 2021. That's where we are. So what we moved in is to the endemic phase. And what I would liken that to is, is the same as how we live day to day with the flu virus. So we know it's there. That one can be subject to getting the flu. We just now need to live our lives with another illness or another variant, another condition that's out there. Now, I say that, but I want to make full disclosure. I don't want anybody to think that I am likening COVID to the flu. I am not. I'm just talking about that this is the way that we now live with. The same way we live with the flu, we have now are having to live with COVID-19. And that's what we mean by the endemic phase.
So endemic it's not going away, basically.
It's not going away, right. Okay. So now we are needing to do that. Now, you still need to do everything you can to make sure there are ways to prevent, unlike the flu where, it's 99% chance at some point in time, someone will catch the flu, even with the flu vaccine, right? You do need to make sure that you take the safeguards, because unlike the flu, COVID-19 attacks in a very different way and can result in a very serious, long-term, permanent, health conditions.
So let me ask you a question with that. My first question is, what are the symptoms now? Because from what I've been listening to the news, but I think they said that the symptoms are totally different for the new variant. So what are the symptoms?
So right now, if you remember, it manifested itself in the past with like a cold, they look more like flu-like symptoms. These are not. These are aches and pains in your body. So you have headaches, you have neck ache, muscle ache, a total overall aching sensation in your body, combined with high fever. So now that's not to say that you won't also experience the runny nose, the cough, the things of that nature, but it manifests itself initially in terms of muscle ache and fatigue. So if you feel like that, the odds are, I would always recommend that you get tested. We have a variety of home health tests, and I don't think right now there's a plan for the federal government to do another release, but hopefully you will have most of us have taken advantage of getting the free test kits that were made available through under Joe Biden's presidency that everybody could get. So, I would encourage everybody, if they have them, to make sure they're stocked up on them, stock up on your mask, your hand sanitizers, and treat this, I hate to say treat this as we have been in the past 3 years, but we need to continue to do that. So
So
just
I think I may have had that. I think I might, because whenever I got the COVID a couple of months ago, my head was throbbing, my legs and my back was aching. I couldn't get up, I couldn't walk, I couldn't anything. And the biggest thing, the struggle that I had was I couldn't breathe. Like my lungs felt like it was just completely decompressed. And the more I tried to get air, the more I coughed up a bunch of stuff. So I was kind of scared, but at that time, I didn't think that it was COVID. It was 3 days after I had caught it that I actually realized that I had COVID. I did the test, and that was when I realized that I had COVID. So if you are feeling aches and pains, and you have a headache, and you're unable to really feel like you're able to move, you may want to get tested, people, because I'm telling you that it was no joke when it was happening. So,
and I'm not trying to be in your business, but have you been vaccinated, or did you get the vaccine?
So I got vaccinated when it first got started. And then after that, because they were talking about the blood clots, and they were talking about all the stuff that was happening. And it was just like, maybe not. But after getting this last variant, I'm going to get vaccinated again. So I got insurance. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Also, go ahead.
The good thing is, the good thing is it's still free at this point in time. Now it's free right now. So, even for those who don't have insurance, don't feel as if that's going to be a barrier for you to get vaccinated or even boosted. Right now, for you, if you got the original 2 doses, because I'm assuming since you're in Scamby County, we only had
I got the Johnson & Johnson.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, that's why I was scared. Look.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna keep my. If you remember, I used to work for Johnson & Johnson for in finance for the longest time, but I'm gonna keep my comment to myself on that one. But if you got your original vaccination, and especially for you, and I'm going to tell you because you received the J&J dose, you absolutely need to go back and get a booster. So it's going to be imperative that you do so. If you receive the 2 doses, for those in the viewing audience, you absolutely do need to get a booster. But the reason why you say that is because the vaccine is only going to last you for so long. It's going to, after the first initial dose, after a year, you lose 85% of its efficacy in that dosage. So that is why, when you hear people talk about getting boosters, you need to do so. The recommended guidance is every 4 to 6 months. I got my first 2 doses, and then I've gotten since then, and I'll be quite honest, I'm late on my original, but I filled up both sides of my COVID card, my vaccination card, because I've gotten boosters every 4 to 6 months as well. So you need to continue that trend. Just like we get a flu shot, I know it's a little bit more routine. We think about flu shots once a year, and you're telling me, like, well, Derrick, that means you're telling me I at least have to get it twice a year. Yeah, you do right now. But I will tell you, I probably would prefer, to have the inconvenience of getting it multiple times than, probably going through the suffering. Now, and I'm going to tell you, probably, although you had it, your symptoms and the way it manifested itself for you were lessened because you had your initial vaccine. For those who have not had that, it can result in fatality. And this variant is much more, it's aggressive in that regard. And if, like you said, it manifests itself differently. Yeah, as you said, you didn't think it was COVID because of the pain, right? And that's not typically associated with COVID-19. So that, and I also wanted, because you talked about it, and so I'm going to make sure we clarify. Hope the vaccines and boosters are 100% safe. Now, there are every now and again with any medication that you take,
Right.
there are, you know, specific cases where people have bad reactions, but you know, that shouldn't discourage anybody from getting it. You know, again, even if you have, such as myself, who have underlying health conditions, it's perfectly safe. So, you know, you shouldn't have to worry about the blood clots or anything that manifests itself. Those are like one in 1,000, you know, that get that. And you know what, we haven't seen, but I think two, maybe three, if I'm not mistaken, since the inception of the vaccine, deaths related to that have been directly linked to the causation of taking the vaccine. So
okay, I got one more question to ask you.
Mhm.
So I'm deathly afraid of needles. That's
Mhm.
another reason why
As am I. Yeah.
doing stuff. Like when I got the vaccine, I wish you could have saw me, because I was literally like inching up towards it so that they could get me. And the lady was like, and she was like, I'm not gonna hurt you. And then she said, boom, and it killed me. And then I got sick afterwards. Like I literally got like, I won't say that I got COVID, but it took me like almost 24 to 48 hours to get past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for people that are afraid of it, is there anything that they're trying to come out with for, you know, taking needles? Because I don't like taking needles.
Yeah. So no, there's no talk of anything right now where the delivery form is going to be anything other than injectable. Now it may very well be, but we're going to have the most effective way to take the vaccine is always going to be through a needle, right? Now it goes without saying, you know, I think the after effect for the vaccination and or boost is going to differ from person to person, right? You were sick a couple of days. My very first dose, I was absolutely fine, you know, but the second dose was a completely different story. You know, it was like, oh Lord, you know, I had to lay in the bed for a couple of days, you know, afterwards. Now that's to be expected, but you know, that is, you know, it varied. Now all of my boosters, like I said, I've had 4 since then, and I've not had any issue. So, you know, it really is, I don't know, I can't pinpoint, and I don't think medically it's been pinpointed why it reacts that way. Again, it's just
it could be that, because I'm not a medicine person either.
Yeah.
I don't like taking medication. So if you don't do medication well, and this is something that you're getting, it could be a possibility that might be the reaction that you get as well.
Yeah.
So.
It very well could be. Like I said, you know, and I know people who, in both cases, both initial doses, they're like, oh, you know, they were drained. And I had somebody who got their shot before I did, and they were in the bed for like 4 days, and I'm like, oh Lord, you know. So when I got
that's just like, not only do you get stuck in the arm, but then you get sick, like, you know, the distance.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow.
And then when I got mine, I kept waiting, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with you? You know, you know, I thought they were being a bit dramatic, you know, and then I was like, fine. And then their second dose, they were fine. And I got my second dose, and I was like, oh Lord, you know, so I was like, my bad, you know, I apologize. I thought you were being a bit dramatic, but now I get it, you know, so it does hit very differently. So
that's cool. Okay, so with that being,
Hey, tribe, come join the largest Black business directory on the Gulf Coast. Join Bantu Cola, where we advertise, buy, and advocate for Black businesses. Bantu Cola, be Black, buy Black, think Black.
okay, so with that being said, I think that we're gonna go ahead and switch some gears and talk a little bit about the policies that have been put into, the laws that have been put into effect. We gave, I think, 5 of them the last time, 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah,
4 of them. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about some of the other laws that are going to affect us as well.
Yeah, so I will talk about one that is prevalent to us, and we're gonna also, and I want to share some things that were up for passing that didn't get, that I think would be beneficial for people as well. And that is, Governor DeSantis also signed into law the ability, and the name escapes me, but I'm gonna. It's a carcinogen that they are placing in asphalt to build new roads in the state of Florida. So
Isn't
now
that dangerous? Doesn't that cause cancer?
it does. It does. That's the whole thing. So the key ingredient that they're mixing in the asphalt in the construction of newly paved roads or the repavement of existing roads is one that causes esophageal cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer. It affects the body, and it is known, and it is a very active agent in terms of the causation of cancer. It is directly, like 100% directly linked. But the Governor DeSantis has signed it into law. So any new road that is formed, or any road that is repaved or resurfaced, is now going to have this I'll call it ingredient or chemical then that directly causes
So
cancer.
let me ask you a question, because in my head it's like, well, I drive, so how is that going to affect us? How can we get cancer from the road?
So yeah, it's not necessarily cancer. Well, so it's the air, right? So in this process that you're driving, you're you think about it. We're in Florida, so the one thing that we do when we drive, I think that's consistent with everybody, is air conditioning, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you're this with the direct heat and the sunlight that permeates on the road, it's going to emit the chemicals that come up
Oh,
off
wow.
of the road. Now, this you would think, okay, well, that's only going to be a short duration. No, that's an eternal. That's as long as there's sun and as long as the road exists, the chemicals are going to, I hate to use the word, but I'm, for lack of a better term, activate, and they're going to be released into the environment. Your car is circulating that air that comes from the external sources, and you're breathing in that reagent that comes in from the ground. So that's how it affects you. It's not like, you're laying on the road, you catch cancer. That's not what it is. But the
Yeah, but you also
sunlight,
got to think about the kids too that play
yeah.
outside,
Mhm.
that are, they draw on the road with hopscotch, just all kinds of things. And so what's his reason behind using that?
I don't know. That's the thing. Nobody has a clue of why the rationale is to use it. It's not something that anybody else in any other states are using, but here in Florida, we use it. I can't give a rationalization. It's one of those, well, what? Why are you that concerned about what we're using in the construction of roads, right? Why is that something that you want to alter? It doesn't make any sense. The only logical assumption that you can make is that there's some kind of economic benefit that he derives personally from this, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that you'd impose a potential health hazard and put people at health risk on a daily basis for
And let's
this.
face it, why does he care? He's running for presidency.
Right, but
So
again, here's the thing. Florida is the blueprint. If he's successful and receives the Republican nomination for the presidency of the United States, and he were to win, please know that Florida, that the other 49 states are going to mirror what Florida has done. So we are the test pilot for the rest of the nation. So if you pay attention, the Florida starts, then Texas follows. They consistently are doing things that are lockstep, but afterwards, I hate to say a copycat, but they're a copycat. And then, if he's successful, then you'll see Alabama, Mississippi, all the other 48 states will follow in suit. Again, this is the same thing. Like when we're looking at, um, you know, why does one do any of the things? Like, you have to ask yourself, why are taxpayers in the state of Florida funding to the tune of $15 million annually? Why are we paying for the state of Florida to go to other states and fly immigrants to other states? Like, so why, we've heard in the news that Ron DeSantis is chartering planes that take people from Texas and move them to places like Chicago. They move to Martha's Vineyard. They move to places in California.
Why?
The logical thought would be, what does any of that have to do with Florida, right? I don't understand why you're doing that. And then more specifically, why am I paying for you to do that?
Exactly. And so let me ask you this question, because with that being said, now that they put this into law, can the laws be changed?
Yes. So the laws absolutely can be changed, but the process for them to be changed first starts with people voting. And then vote. You have to vote for, and I'm going to take a different approach, and I'm going to take out Democrat and Republican. I'm going to remove that from the conversation. Okay. Let's just talk about issue-based or issue-focused conversation, issue topics. If you don't want to take your hard-earned tax dollars to pay to fund the government for to allow us, the state of Florida, to go into other states, to fly people to other states, none of which have to do with Florida, then you need to support candidates, which starts at your local state house, your local state Senate races that don't support that are going to change that. Currently, what we see in the state of Florida is a supermajority, which means that there's all one party. 85% of the electorates are all Republican. So that changes the way they have to do things. If you don't like the way things are done, and we have an idea of how people voted, you just need to go and look at how your local senators and House of Representatives person for the state of Florida have voted. And you vote opposite of that. If you don't want your Social Security to be completely dismantled, you look for the people who are authoring those bills and you vote the opposite way. You vote, if you don't want those, when we talk about the, a good example right now is that students, if anybody has a child in the state of Florida's K-12 system or public education system, I'll use the name William. Children who are named William sometimes go by Bill, sometimes they go by Will, and they've been doing so perfectly well for whatever duration of time that they've been in school. Now the state of Florida has said, you can't call William, Will, or Bill. You can't call Charlie, Chuck, or Charles. You have to call them William. You have to call them Charles. You have to call them whatever their birth certificate says. Nicknames are not allowed. They're against the law.
Wait, that's a law?
Yes.
I'm sorry. My brain is trying to what's the purpose for that?
Again, it stems in, and I'll just tell you, it stems in hatred and bigotry. So what this does is this prevents students who have chosen to be transgendered and go by a different name. This forces you to use their name assigned at birth. So, if someone who is transgendered, I'll go with Eric now wants to be Erica, and teachers and faculty and staff have respected that in the past, they now have to go back to calling them Eric, even though they have chosen to identify themselves as Erica. So that is what this is. But this now has a direct impact on everybody. So you can't just say if you are transgendered, because that would be deemed discriminatory. This goes for everybody. So now everybody, whether your name is Jack and you go by Jay, whether your name is William and you go by Will, you don't have to go by William. Even those people, like who use their middle name as their name that they identify. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't like their first name, or nobody calls them by their first name. They still have to go by their first name and what's been assigned at birth and what's biologically
Is
or
this
what's on their
just
birth
in
certificate.
school, or is this everywhere?
No, this is just in school, just in K through 12. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when you're at work, you go by whatever you want to, your name is Boo Boo, go by Boo Boo, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but just in the educational system, yes, that's where you're going to see this.
So, okay, now, when you say it's about bigotry and hatred, from what you gave me, it's just basically the transgender, the LGBTQ part of it. Is there anything for the minority about that as well that might pose a problem?
Well, anyway, anybody who goes by, some people, I won't say pose a problem, but some people, may not like their maiden name. They may feel that their name may sound too ethnic, so they want to go by some variation or derivation of that name. I have I can, she's probably not going to see this, so I'll use her. I have a friend whose name was Curticia, but and she was an attorney, but she went by C. Renee because her middle name was Renee. So she's now, if she were in school, even though she's been Renee for forever and 30 years, she's now have to, she would have to be identified as Curticia. That's not how she grew up. It's an African name. She was from Liberia. So it was, it's just a choice now, from that perspective. And that's where it's going to do it. But again, when you look at it, these laws, although they're specifically targeted, and this is what the thing that you have to take into consideration, even though their intent was specifically targeted to one community, it affects all. That's the thing that we have to do that. So irrespective of whether you're trans or LGBTQ or a person of color, there are white people who go by William, whose name is William, that go by Bill, so they've been billed for grades K through 4, and their parents call them Bill at home. Now they have to, at home they can still be Bill, but at school they have to go by William. Think about it.
Let me ask you a question. How does this get policed in schools? Because it's not like, the teachers are being monitored and watched.
But they are. And they're being monitored and watched by administration, but more specifically, they're being monitored and watched by students. So, just you have so I'll use myself, you and I as an example. You're my teacher in 11th grade. And I've always been Bill, or I'll call Will because I don't know. Bill's not my name. So let's say my name is William, and I've always been Will from grades K through 10. And you start calling me William, and I'm like, no, it's Will. And you say, no. You say, okay, well, I'll go by Will. Susan over here goes back and tells her mother, well, why is it that Miss Johnson can call William Will, but she won't call me Susie? Wait a minute, what do you mean? Then you go back and report. That's where you're getting the policing, because it's being policed amongst the students. And you have to, everybody doesn't feel the same way. They don't have a who cares view. Some people are very strict and adamant about, okay, this is the law, you have to follow it. And they will report when it's not being followed. So it is being policed. But more specifically, you have classroom observation by administration and instruction. So, if you're used to calling somebody by their nickname and you slip up, and all of a sudden, again, teachers have relationships. Just because they were teaching them in their current grade doesn't mean that they weren't aware of who they were in the grades before, particularly in high school. I had teachers my senior year who knew my name prior to my senior year. So it wasn't like that's their first interaction. So you have to think, if you've been calling me Will from grades 9, 10th, and 11th, and not get to your classroom and you say, Will, it becomes a problem, So that's
Wow.
what
So basically what you're saying is like the kids are helping to set the laws a little bit because they're the ones that
they're helping to enforce, not set, enforce,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I want to say that all children are doing that because it's not all children.
Right.
But
It's certain ones where the parents have taught them to do that. Basically.
Yes.
We have a lot of Karens in school and we didn't realize it.
That's the best way to say it.
Okay. So what is another law that has been affected that we don't know about?
So I will talk about because we could be here. Most of them are relatively germane in and of itself. They don't have as much of a huge impact. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is we've had the legislature, which includes the state house and the state senate, have had the opportunity to do great things. One of which was, but they opted not to. That's the other part of I didn't want to say they had the opportunity. They had the opportunity, but chose not to do it. And one of those things, if you weren't aware, last year we had a situation where there was a woman who was arrested in Gainesville or in the Alachua County system, right? She was arrested and she was pregnant, and they didn't do a pregnancy test, and she was experiencing stomach pains, and she was left untreated. They thought that she was faking. They didn't do anything about it, which ended up resulting in her delivering a stillborn child on the floor of her jail cell.
Oh, Jesus.
Now all of this could have been prevented by a simple pregnancy test, or adequate treatment. If someone says that they're experiencing pain or symptoms, you should treat them accordingly. A medical staff should treat them accordingly. So there was a bill that was introduced that would require female women, when they're facing, or at the time that they're incarcerated, to receive a mandatory pregnancy test and any kind of health care that's associated with being pregnant or at that point in time. Additionally, if a woman is pregnant and she is going through a trial and she is ultimately sentenced, she has the option. She would have the option of staying her sentencing. So if she was sentenced to incarceration, she could delay her incarceration period until the point that she gives birth, and shortly thereafter she would then go on to face her sentence. That's a reasonable thing, and something that I think anybody could get behind, right? That gives you time to plan for the care of your child after birth. It gives you opportunity to continue whatever prenatal treatment that you're having up until the point in time that you're incarcerated. Makes sense,
right?
Doesn't hurt anybody, right? They said absolutely, hands down, no, we're not doing it. Doesn't make any sense.
I think that, so I wonder if it's because they feel like they think women would get pregnant on purpose so that they can stay their sentences, or if it could be where they might be a flight risk or something like that.
But the bill was written at the time that you have to have been pregnant at the time of your time that you were charged and stuff. Okay. So you can't then, to your point, you couldn't be, okay, I'm without child. Now you've been charged, arrested, and you're going to trial, and then you purposely get pregnant because you know that you're going to be found guilty. It wasn't written for that purpose, nor could that be a loophole in that sentence. So it would, again, the key is to, at the point in time of the charge, you were issued a pregnancy test to determine if you are indeed in fact pregnant. And again, it was a twofold piece of legislation that would have benefited women in the state of Florida tremendously, but they were like, nope, not having it, absolutely not. And I think that that's a reasonable request. I'm not sure that I would, perhaps, there would be some assumption of evasion at the point in time of sentencing. But I think that would be a very minute, possibility, such that you wouldn't penalize everybody else. That would be a good thing for the majority of that and going forward. So again, these are the things that I talk about when we talk about these things. But I go back to my original point, which was, look at these issues. If this is something that you supported or you think is a reasonable thing or a reasonable request or a reasonable law, then you put people to represent you who support the same things that you do. If you see currently right now that individuals do not support you in that same capacity, then you don't vote for them. We have to go get away from this, like, okay, well, this is what I blanket. And we also need to I encourage everybody to fact check. I'm a huge believer in fact checking. You can't just take, sound bites on either side, Democratic or Republican,
Absolutely.
and saying, okay, this is the case. You also can't just take a media point of view and what you hear on the media, because I will tell you, like, we live in Northwest Florida, right? And what we see on our news outlets, that exact same thing could be happening. I'll give you an example. I was in Orlando in May, and I don't remember what the situation was, but I'll remember watching Channel 3 News or WEAR 3 News the Thursday before I left, and then being in Orlando and watching the continued coverage of the exact same scenario in Orlando. And it was completely different. The media reporting on it was very different on the very same issue. And again, you have to look at your ownerships of where your media outlet's coming from, who owns the broadcasting groups that you get your news from. That also impacts it. So again, but the most important thing to do is fact check and not just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. You have to get it from credible sources, what I'm saying. So
right. Let me ask you this other question. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but so when we talk about the different people that voted for things, looking at who we have right now.
When we talk about what? I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. When we talk about voting people into particular offices, for example, like we have Michelle Sullivan, and we have Alex Andrade, Matt Gaetz, all these different people. And they're representing our local area. How do we find out what they voted for? And and I'm not saying that they're bad people, I'm just saying that like a lot of times we hear the good side of them because they get on television and tell all the good stuff that they've done. But then where do we go to find the bad stuff? Like that they're doing helping us.
So your register vote is all it's so wonderful that you said this, because and I wish I don't,
you can share you're able to share.
I don't know how to.
So you see the little box?
Present now? Is that what that is?
Yeah, okay. You can present and show us, because I want you to tell us what to do. Yes. You just pick either you can pick the link, or you can pick the and I'll take this part out of our
here it is. Okay. Let me, if I can get that share. So am I sharing this?
You absolutely are.
Okay. So this is like, if we look, you did this you segued into this perfectly. And that's why I laughed when you asked, because I was like, we have this. So this is just a few of the bills that we've highlighted here in our area, how your local legislators, again, Alex Andrade and Michelle Salzman being in the House and Doug Broxson is our senator for this area. So we talked about voter suppression, and this is what we talked about, Senate Bill 7050, which is
wait. When it says yes, does that mean they voted for voter suppression?
Yes, they voted for voter suppression. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the conceal and 7050, we call it's voter suppression, but it, to put it in its original concept, this is the elections law. This is the one we talked about, how we can't register 501 non or third party voter registration organizations can't register people the same way they used to. Why it allows Governor Ron DeSantis to remain in office all while running for presidency, because he should have had to resign according to the old law, but he is still in office, and that's for 7050. They all voted yes. If you look at HB, the concealed carry law, the one that allows us to do it with unlicensed, they all voted yes. And in fact, Michelle Salzman was a co-sponsor for this.
I always thought there was something hinky about her. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah. Well, your thoughts aren't very far off. We talk about the near total abortion ban. Everybody voted yes. The discrimination bill 1069. Everybody said yes, and Michelle Salzman was a co-sponsor. Again, the public workers and their unions. So there are union busting bills where they take money out of union folks who are working, who are subscribed to a union, except for the police and first responders and the firefighters. They don't get money, but they are taking money out of their checks on a weekly basis. They all voted yes, except Michelle Salzman, right? The anti-immigration bill 1718, the one where now when you go to the doctor, they're asking you, are you a U.S. citizen? They all said yes, and in fact, Michelle Salzman co-sponsored the bill. A taxable giveaway to unaccountable corporate schools. They all voted yes. The censorship in higher education. Everybody voted yes. Anti-renters rights bill. So we talk about for those who rent, and within the state of Florida, everybody used to have a Bill of Rights, that they were entitled to as a tenant. The Republican supermajority all voted. They essentially abolished that and did away with it. And
so we don't have any rights anymore as renters?
Yeah, that is correct. So they all voted yes.
Wow.
A perpetual predatory fee on renters. This is, so you're clear, what this is that if you notice, we talk about affordable housing and how people have been displaced out of their homes because they can't afford rent.
Right.
There was a cap on the way landlords and homeowners how much they could raise their rent, on a annualized or from after each lease to lease. They did a perpetual predatory fee on renters. They all voted yes. So now you can go from, if you're paying $1,000, you now for that same apartment are now paying $1,500 without any repercussions.
That's why they keep going up on the rent here as well. See, these are the things that I did not know was happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine all the people that don't know this stuff that's going on. Keep going. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and like they have government in shadows. This is like, so, the governor in his narcissistic ways, as I will call them, introduced a bill that said, hey, for people who are on the internet, if you are talking about me, you now have to report to the state of Florida that you are talking about me. We need to know who you are. That is government in shadow. So now that we know you're talking about me, we need to see if you're talking negatively about me. So we want to know who you are so we can follow you.
I will boldly tell him every single time that I'm talking negatively about him.
So you technically have to register. And
that's he'll see the video. So
right. But so I will give you the disclaimer that you have to register if your platform is monetized, if you're making money off your videos, it's not just any kind of comment. But
let's take a quick break. Guys, I'm telling you, this is a lot of good information. Just hang tight. We're going to come back in about 2 minutes. We got to get our commercial in. Thank you.
Hey, tribe, come join the largest Black business directory on the Gulf Coast. Join Bantu Cola, where we advertise, buy, and advocate for Black businesses. Bantu Cola, be Black, buy Black, think Black.